they sacrificed a lot for our country, and I think it's important to take the day not just as an off day, but to do something for them.
Just to let them know that they're appreciated is tremendous, and it's something that we can all do. Doesn't cost us anything to give a little bit of gratitude.
It is the land that we love, defended by the people that we love. This Veterans Day, we are proud to salute America and all the Firebirds that serve. Welcome to Flight of the Firebirds, a Kellenberg Memorial podcast. I am Mr. Matthew Bursig, chairman of the History Department for grades 9 through 12. I'm joined today by my colleague, Sergeant First Class Anthony Wevers, who has served for over 25 years with the 42nd Infantry Division Band of the New York Army National Guard, and for 16 years here as an educator for the Science Department at Kellenberg.
Mr. Bursig, it's great to be with you today.
We are also thrilled to have junior Abigail Hassett. Abigail comes from a long line of American heroes spanning multiple branches of the U.S. Armed Forces, and she herself has ambitions of attending a military academy or enlisting after graduation next year. Abigail, it's a pleasure to see you.
Hi, Mr. Bursig. Thanks for having me.
Veterans Day, of course, takes place on November 11th each year in celebration of all of our American veterans who served in our armed forces. It comes out of the tradition of the First World War, where originally it was called Armistice Day, which on November 11th was when World War I came to an end. After World War II, they had more veterans because they didn't realize there was going to be a Second World War, right? So that's why in 1954 they established Veterans Day to celebrate all of our veterans from all of our armed forces. So with that in mind, we can begin our little conversation today. Mr. Wevers, you touched upon that you've had about 25 years of military service. Can you expand upon that time in the U.S. Army and where that journey has taken you?
Absolutely. So back in 2000, I graduated high school and had this ambition to join the military, but I always had a fascination with Army bands. And my goal originally at a young age was to be in the West Point Band until somebody explained to me that the West Point Band was not actually part of the academy. So with my hopes and dreams of an Army band dashed against the rock, a band director actually reached out to me and said, down in Freeport, just south of here, across from Camp Coleman, was the 42nd Infantry Division Band. And I started my service with them back in 2000, actually enlisted on the birthday of the Army, so June 14th. And since then, I've been enjoying the opportunity to serve in the military and do the Army things, but also be a professional musician and travel around the state of New York, playing a lot of concerts because we are musical ambassadors for the Army. Kind of a softer side of the military, and people definitely get into it when we march down the street or come into a town and play. But that's taken me over to Iraq in 2005. We were the first National Guard band to deploy since World War II. And then during Sandy, we were mobilized and out there and doing some support, cleaning things up. A lot of our guys were involved in the COVID missions. I was here teaching, or not really here. I was home remotely teaching, so I didn't jump on that one. But this past March, they mobilized us again for the support of the New York State Prison Corrections Officer strike. So I spent 3 weeks sleeping in the basement of a prison and working as a corrections officer. But it's been a great opportunity. It's given me a lot of insight as to what it really means to serve our community as opposed to the active Army that serves our whole country. So it's been a lot of fun.
The students use the term niche a lot nowadays, and I think your service in the military for the band is a little niche, right?
So the Army has its ceremonies, has its tradition, and the band has always been part of that tradition. From your Civil War time of calling out bugle calls and moving lines and bringing front, back, over to just entertaining the troops. When you get musicians together and they start playing, it adds a certain component, especially ceremonies. They love when the band can show up because that music connects to the soul, it hits the emotion. But we do go and do all the Army things. We do our weapons qualification and physical fitness. But I say out of the 39 days a year, I need to do Army. 4 of them I do Army, and the other 35 I get to go out and play music and work with some really fantastic musicians.
That's awesome. And apart from the music side of it, was there any other type of, call to you? Like you mentioned a bugle call, right? Like, are you being called by the bugle to join the military? I mean, last week we had a podcast about vocations, right? Is that a similar thing for you? Like a priest is called to the service of the church, were you called to the service of your country?
Yeah, so I grew up in scouting, and the idea of serving in the military was organic when you come through an organization like that. And then what job did I actually want to do in the military? It took me a little time to figure that out. There were days where I was like, hey, I want to work on helicopters, or maybe I want to be an officer. But I found that the opportunity to play music and connect with people in an emotional connection was really where I was called to be. Playing trombone is one side of things. When I was younger, I was also out there in front singing, and being able to use those different talents to connect with people emotionally was always just this selling point, which is why I continue doing it for the last 25 years. I don't see any reason to stop, because it just, when I get to put on the uniform and stand out there, you're singing God Bless America or God Bless USA, and people are waving their flags, and you see the tears in their eyes. Like, it really hits home that you're doing something of importance.
Music plays such a huge role, right? We know music plays a huge role in the church, and I know that with XLT and Gregorian. Human beings love music, right? And a soldier's going to love music. A Marine's going to love music to help them get through what they need to get through, in the whole process. And tradition's important, right?
It is.
And I know I wouldn't be doing Civil War reenacting if it wasn't for that, which is entirely another issue. We can do a whole podcast on that, but that's another story. But Mr. Wevers, you've done 25 years of service, and now we have young Abigail here who is considering military service. And it sounds like that in her lineage, in her family, and I remember hearing you talk about this last year at the Veterans Tribute Dinner, that you have a strong military tradition and connection. Could you maybe expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, well, my grandfather was in the Army for 47 and a half years, and he started out in the Army National Guard with the 44th Infantry Division as commander of the 102nd Medical Battalion. And then about 2000-ish, he went into the reserves as commander of the 344th Combat Support Hospital over in Fort Totten. And he did that for quite some time. He never really deployed, because he always said they would pull people individually. And he always said that if he's going to deploy, he wants to deploy with his men. He wanted to go with the people he trained with the people that he was working with. He always wanted to have that sense of community and to keep those people together. I also have an uncle in the Marines who got me into scouting, and he was in the Marines early 2000s, I think. And it really shows in his personality, because a lot of times you can sometimes look at a Marine and you just know. And I remember growing up, I always looked up to my grandpa and my uncle the most, because first of all, they gave great hugs. They always give great hugs. And second of all, I always just saw them, and I saw this image of honor and loyalty and service, and I knew that I wanted to do something like that.
Now, in junior year, we do the family history paper, right? Do you have anything maybe that you'd like to say to your fellow junior students? Is there any advice you want to give, or any type of interesting stories that you have discovered in this whole process?
When you're looking into these stories, just talk to your family members. I found out so much about my family just by talking to my Nona. She's my great grandma, and her husband was in the Army during World War II, and he unfortunately did pass away before I was born, but I learned so many stories just from talking to her. And I just heard so many different things about him, his personality, what he went through, what happened when he came home. There were so many stories that got told, just handed down from family members. Even if they're not still alive, you can still hear their stories just by talking to people.
Yeah, I mean, I used to call my grandfather, who's unfortunately no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago, and I always called him my favorite veteran. He served during the Korean conflict, the Korean War in the Air Force. And we would just have a quick conversation, because I talk to my grandfather all the time. I'd just say, thank you so much for your service. And he'd say, I appreciate it. Love you, kid. That type of thing.
And I think it's important to take the day, not just as an off day, but to do something for them. Even if it's just to go maybe write some cards and give it to a VA hospital, just do something for veterans and take the time out of your day, out of your life, just to have one day to honor them and to do something for them.
With that in mind, Kellenberg has the Veterans Tribute Dinner leading up to Veterans Day. I mean, you're in the History Club, so you're a part of that. So what do you have to say to that?
There was one person I've known since I was 5 years old. I didn't know he was a veteran. And it was because he came back from war during Vietnam, where it was like very controversial to be a veteran. And so he never really like publicized the fact that he was a veteran, and it was never really known. But he was over in the mountains of Tibet during Vietnam, and he was in the Air Force doing communications, and he had so many great stories, but he didn't really feel thanked or like he could share them. And then I invited him to the Veterans Tribute Dinner because I knew he did a lot with the American Legion, but I didn't know he was a veteran until he came and he had his Air Force hat on, and I started talking to him about it. And I heard a lot of similar stories from veterans, how they didn't really feel thanked, and they came to Kellenberg and they saw like this overwhelming amount of thanks and like respect for them when they came to the tribute dinner.
That's great. I mean, I remember before COVID, we had this great opportunity. Maybe Mr. Wevers remembers this. We had a gentleman who celebrated his 100th birthday the night we had the Veterans Tribute Dinner, and he had fought in the Second World War. And we all sang Firebird Swing. Mr. Blanton was still, shout out to Mr. Blanton, who is now retired, was leading Firebird Swing at the time. And his dad had served in the Navy in World War II. So Mr. Blanton was always very appreciative of World War II vets. And we all sang happy birthday to this gentleman. I can't remember this gentleman's name. I think he has since passed away. But it was like a really cool, special moment that you're like connected to history and that little quick little like just a happy birthday, Mr. Wevers, is there anything you want to add maybe to what Abigail has said into the importance of the holiday and thanking veterans?
I usually tell students with Veterans Day coming up to get out there, and if they don't have a family member, look for those black hats, right? You can always see the veteran. They're wearing their black hat. They usually have the little ribbons on the top, or other times they'll just have Army veteran, those little interactions when you're passing through the store to just say, hey, thank you for your service. It doesn't need to be a long conversation, but I know myself when I'm out there and we might be on mission and we're hitting a rest stop real quick, usually we're in uniform, these little ones come up and they're just in awe and, oh, thank you so much for your service. And to be able to get down to their level, thank them, shake their hand, sometimes take a picture with them, it makes that connection. And to go out there and look for a veteran that you know, or just one that you passed in the store, just to let them know that they're appreciated is tremendous. And it's something that we can all do. It doesn't cost us anything to give a little bit of gratitude.
Yeah, I mean, a very short little thank you. I mean, just in life in general, right? You just, acknowledge people, right? And maybe they're not being acknowledged, and a simple little piece of acknowledgement goes a long way, right?
And on the other side is, if you do know somebody who is a Vietnam veteran, we all know the history behind how they came home, but slowly they have actually paved the way for the Iraq, Afghanistan veterans and have changed how we've been received, and also a lot of the benefits that we've gained because of their story. So if you know one who still hasn't opened up, try to get them to talk to other veterans. There's some great organizations out there, as well as just the vet center. Like there's one over in Hicksville. They have groups of Vietnam guys that are now healing and being able to finally talk about their experience. So look for them and not only thank them, but if you know one personally, help them to get that closure that they didn't get when they got home.
And thanks for that little bit of information there, especially for our Vietnam vets. I'm going to kind of segue. You were talking about service, right? And I have this quote from George Washington. It was actually written to Benedict Arnold, of all people. So, we got to be careful with him. But Washington said 250 years ago, because we are now celebrating our 250th anniversary over the next couple of years, every post is honorable in which a man can serve his country. So if we amend that to a person serves his country, right? Can you guys speak? We'll start with Mr. Wevers and then Abigail, just about service in general. What does that mean to you, whether that be military or community service?
Service to me is all about giving back, and we live in the greatest country. We have so many blessings, and to be able to take a little bit of time, whether it's in service just in your community or raising your hand and pledging to serve in the military, it's all about giving back and being able to maintain and improve on this great life that we have. The military has been a fantastic opportunity for me to serve, and the brothers and sisters that I have in arms are some of the closest relationships that I have. But the relationship that I have with the community and being able to work with the Boy Scouts and be that example for them, give my time to them so that they have strong leadership and they understand what it is to be a proud American. I think it's something we can all do, but it does take a certain amount of selflessness to reach that level of service.
I mean, service, democracy, right? They're verbs, really, right? You know, we think of them as nouns, but we should use them as verbs, right? Because
Absolutely.
we have to act on, you know, those things that we need to do, and whatever that is for everybody is different, right?
Yeah.
But that's great. Abigail.
I definitely agree with a lot of what Mr. Weaver said. It's very much so giving back, because a lot of times when I've spoken to veterans, I've said to them, thank you for their service, and they said in response, it's not a service, it's an honor. A lot of veterans and a lot of people in general, when you just do any kind of service, the best way to do it is to see it not as just something that you're doing for yourself, something that you're doing, but as a way to give back.
We live in a time that's culturally charged, politically charged. There's a lot of noise. There's social media. There's bells. There's whistles. There's stuff going on. How can we maybe transcend this or diffuse this a little bit with our veterans, using our veterans as an example? Like, is there something shared or unified that we can all have?
For me, it's the flag, right? When you see the American flag out there, and Memorial Day is great. You know, you drive down Hempstead Turnpike and there's 100 flags that are attached to power line poles and people put out their flag. But I always say, I love when I move into an area and we're about to play a concert and you see houses that have the American flag out. It's something I grew up thinking a lot about, and you don't see it as much anymore. That flag is such a strong symbol for so many. And as people come over here from other countries, that flag is a sign of opportunity. But for those of us who have served, that flag got carried with us, and it's a real symbol of everything that we are as Americans.
Abigail?
I definitely agree with Mr. Weavers on that one. But in addition to the American flag, I also think that songs, kind of like what Mr. Weavers was saying earlier, with like songs like God Bless the USA and God Bless America, songs like that, when we did the 9/11 ceremony and that one police officer started singing it, everyone stood up and started waving their flag. There are certain songs that everyone knows or that most people hear, and it just like brings together a sense of unity and brings people together.
You know, that emotion that you spoke of with songs like that. You go to a baseball game and everybody stands up, and whether it's the national anthem or God Bless America, that connection to the heart. Right? For me, again, that's where the music side comes in. But being able to just amplify that in our communities is so important. So great point over there.
Mr. Weavers, this is specifically for you. You know, we might have a lot of students that are considering, you know, a military life or military service or military academy, or they're just toying with the idea. What kind of advice would you offer them?
It's a great question. I get a lot of students that knock at my door and say, hey, I heard that you were in the Army, or my guidance counselor told me I should come over and talk to you. These conversations are great opportunities because I try to paint a picture for them that the military has a wide variety of things for them to look at and to be involved in. The Army isn't just go be infantry and run over there with a rifle. The Army's got so many different opportunities, as do the other branches, where you can find skills that translate over to the civilian side. And that's always my starting point. Go and serve, but look for an opportunity to develop yourself so that when your time comes that you're done serving, what can you now use the training and experience to be able to continue serving on a civilian side? For me, being a musician, I've developed exponentially by playing with other professional musicians within the Army, going to the leadership schools that the Army's provided. But I have friends that work on helicopters, that we've had alumni that have gone off and become diesel mechanics or have become different technicians with specialties that when their service is over, they are able to transition over to the civilian life and have a skill set that is marketable. Sometimes people look at, I don't think I want to go to war. Well, I don't actually think most of us in the military want to go to war, but we prepare ourselves in case there's a need for us to do that. The rest of our time really is about service and skills development. The discipline side is fantastic, but I always say there are a lot of really smart people in the military. You know, when I was in high school, I remember a guidance counselor saying, that student's not very good at school. Like, maybe they should think about the service. When I got to the service, I realized there are really, really technical jobs out there that, depending on your aptitude, you can develop some really world-class skills. I mean, military intelligence, those guys are crazy smart. And you need a really high ASVAB to go and do that job. And the same thing on the officer side. You know, for those that are looking, do I want to be an officer? Do I want to enlist? Well, do you want to be somebody that does the planning and do the logistics? Hey, this is what people are going to go do. Or do you enjoy being the person that actually gets the work done? And those types of conversations are really helpful. So when students are interested or thinking about it, go and talk to those who have done it. Certainly, they can always come and talk to me. But even talking to recruiters, I say talk to every single one of them. You know, you're not signing any paper by going and having a conversation.
Yeah, and there's such a broad spectrum of possibilities and opportunities, right, available to you. I mean, we've been focusing on the Army because that's your experience, but there's the naval side of it, there's the aviation side of it, there's the medical side of it, right?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people don't realize the opportunities, like the Armed Forces medical training programs that are out there will pay for, if you have the grades, they'll pay for your entire medical training and make you a full-fledged doctor. You can also, get your flight time and become a pilot. There's so many opportunities that people don't even realize are there that you got to dig and you got to get online. The internet's awesome. It'll tell you lots of stuff that's out there. But go and talk to real people and ask the hard questions. Don't just be sold on, this is what the Army does, or I saw this in a movie. Like, that's not reality. Go and talk to real people, ask real questions, and, spend some time in prayer. For me, it was a tough decision when I really thought about, am I going to go do Army? I was not as confident as I am at this point in my life. So I spent some time in prayer, and I first looked at the Army in like April of 2000. I didn't enlist until June because I wasn't really sure this is what he wanted me to do. But any aspect of life, if you're thinking about trying something, spend some time in prayer, see what his plan is for you. I never thought I would have ended up in a combat zone. Being a bandsman, we were told that you played when they left and you play when they come home. So when I got a call that I was deploying, I was like, this isn't a real thing. And even when we went up to drum and started training, we all thought, somebody's going to change their mind. And then they didn't. And it was one of the best experiences of my entire life. And yeah, every day was scary. Things went boom and you just said, okay. But it really forced me to engage in conversation with him and figure out what it was that he wanted me to do. And I truly believe I am here at Kellenberg because I answered his call. So that's what I got out of the Army. And I think it's been super positive. I love what I do. And I'm envious of a lot of the jobs that are out there because there are people in the military doing some really cool things right now.
Thank you for that. I think, speaking as a teacher and a guidance counselor as well, that idea of discernment, is so important for our students. And even if they don't pursue something, they did research, they engaged in it, they thought on it, and most importantly, like you were saying, they prayed on it, right? And it's
Absolutely.
Such great advice for life, just in general. And Abigail, we'll just transition to you a little bit because, we wish you luck if you are pursuing the service academies because it's not always the easiest process, and I've visited West Point and have seen what they've had to go through. And as a guidance counselor too, I'm aware of the process. What's calling you then as a young person?
I just spent most of my life growing up around veterans, And a lot of them were some of the biggest role models in my life. And over time, I kind of thought about it, never really, took too long to think about it or anything. And sometime last year, we had an alumni come back for a history club meeting. And he just finished basic in the Marines. And he was talking about his experience in basic and how he was about to get his assignment to where he was going. And it got me thinking that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, what career I wanted to pursue. And so I decided, you know what, I want to look into the military. I want to see if there's anything there that interests me, because it had come up a couple times in the past. And I started looking into it, and I found that there were a lot of different branches of the Army. There were a lot of different careers. And I started talking to people. I saw West Point during branch week. They had all the helicopters. They showed you could talk to people from each individual branch. And that kind of helped me decide that that's probably the direction I want to go in, because it's a career of service. It's a career of just helping people.
That's actually very wise of you as a young person, that you're pursuing this and considering this, and that you're willing to accept this kind of responsibility. I think one of the things that we're just learning from this conversation is that we all ultimately have this great love for our country. We're seeing that through, the service of our, armed forces. We're seeing that with people that are working in hospitals. We're seeing that with people who are teachers, and that we are providing this greater responsibility of citizenship. Anything you guys want to, maybe quickly expand upon that a little bit?
I definitely think that there's a lot of different ways you can serve our country. There's a lot of different ways you can serve the community, and everyone's called to do it differently. Some people are called to do it through armed service. A lot of people are called to do it through the medical field, or even through just everyday jobs like teaching or other things like that. Every job on some level helps someone else, especially jobs that touch a lot of different people. And I think if someone is considering going into the service, it's not the only job if you want to help people, but it is also a very good option, because it's definitely a more direct way to help people. You can visibly see the impact you make sometimes.
That's a great point that you brought up, that every job that's out there is going to have an impact. And you started talking about medical professionals. I started thinking, I'm like, hey, sure glad that I had the sanitation guy come by this morning, because otherwise my house would be a mess, right? Everybody, regardless of what job it is. And you can see it here in Kellenberg and the way that our community comes together. We all love this place, and in the bigger picture, we really do all love the country that we're in. That's why so many of us are passionate about it, regardless of political side. People are passionate because they love the country and they love the opportunities that are here. And I think that we see that in those moments of disaster or in those moments of tragedy, the way the entire country will come together. And that was part of my origin story in the Army with the falling of the towers, and seeing the way that the entire country just put their own personal beliefs aside to come together. And we see it time and time again with these natural disasters that happen, the outpour of charity that we give to total strangers because they're American. And so it's great to be a part of that, and every one of us has that intrinsic responsibility to our fellow men.
Mr. Wevers, I speak to you every single day. We are basically bunkmates in room 249. Abigail, I see you at every XLT Gregorian music-related thing regularly. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. We want to pray for all of you listeners out there, all of your families. We want to pray for all of our veterans, thank them for their service, our active military, and ultimately pray for peace in the world. So if we would pray the prayer to St. Michael the Archangel. All right, we'll begin in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly hosts, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all of the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. May God bless Kellenberg Memorial, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. I'm Mr. Matthew Bursig, and this has been Flight of the Firebirds.